for a special meeting that was requested at the at the committee meeting, to the committee in the whole, to have a open discussion on the RFP procurement, to answer questions on a competitive negotiated procurement for the purchase of replacement rail cars. We have a number of presenters, and I think they're all here.
Yes,
And
sir.
they are led by our indefatigable Chief of Operations, Dr. Caver.
Yes.
Dr. Caver, the floor is yours.
To the chair, I just need to call the list of board members. Is that okay?
Oh, you want to call the roll?
I believe so. Do we have to?
I was skipping that since I only saw three of us. We got,
Okay,
oh yeah,
Lauren
Welch is
is
here,
here.
isn't she?
All right. President Lucas,
Present.
Ms. Moss, Mayor Biassiata, Mr. Joyce, Mayor Kumar, Ms. McCall, Ms. Peo, Mayor Weiss,
Here.
and Ms. Welch just stepped out, but she is here. So we have four
Very
committee members
good.
present.
Now we'll go back to my introduction again, Dr. Caver.
Thank you, Reverend Lucas. Good morning, Chair Lucas, members of the board. My name is Flonce Caver, and I am the Chief Operating Officer here at the Greater Cleveland RTA. Today, I have the pleasure of providing our second presentation on the RFP procurement to replace the authority's rail cars. Before I start, I want to make, last Tuesday I introduced our team, and one of our team members was not here. And so I want to introduce to you all Carolyn Young. Carolyn Young is sitting here, and Carolyn Young is our representative from the Office of Management and Budget. Ms. Young.
Hey, Doc.
Yes.
And I believe we've got IA Steve for Tony. Behind you to your left.
Yeah. All right. And today, Steve has been a member of our team also, Steve Zimmerman, and he will be representing internal audit for today. So Steve, welcome. So this project is for the design, manufacture, delivery of up to 24 high-floor light rail vehicles, spare parts, tooling, and training, with an option to procure up to 36 additional vehicles, which will need to be exercised within 7 years from the contract signature. To provide a bit of an overview, the railcar replacement project fits within our agency, as it was one of the pillar studies, one of the 5 pillar studies that our organization undertook. These pillar studies were critical studies that were used to inform our 10-year strategic plan. So in 2018, we contracted with LTK Engineering Services to perform a comprehensive evaluation of our heavy and light rail cars. And so for terms, the heavy rail cars are the trains that operate on the red line, and the light rail cars are the trains that operate on the shaker lines, which are the blue and green lines. The findings from LTK were that we needed to replace the heavy rail vehicles within 5 years and the light rail vehicles within 10 years. And the rationale for that replacement was that both of those fleets were experiencing structural loss from corrosion. In both of those fleets, given their age, there's a lack of readily available parts, and the cost to rehabilitate those vehicles would far exceed the cost to purchase new. So to provide for you just a bit of information on the cost of reconditioning, if we were to have reconditioned and created another midlife rehab, it would have costed an estimated $81 million for the heavy rail vehicles and $77 million for the light rail vehicles. And we would have still needed to then replace and buy new cars for those within 12 years of that time frame. And so there is really no recommendation or no method or mechanism for us to replace a car that old through another midlife overhaul. Parts would be readily unavailable, and there's just a risk of trying to re-engineer something that old. And so a quote from the vendor was, "There's not enough value in the remaining life of the existing structures and components that would justify a life extension versus a new vehicle procurement." So what does our existing fleet look like and its age? So the heavy rail fleet, the Red Line cars, our subway cars, they were created by Tokyo Car Corporation. We purchased 60 of those cars, and we have 40 of them remaining in our system. They went into service in 1984 and are 39 years old. They did receive a mechanical overhaul in the 2008 to 2012 timeframe, and an interior overhaul. If you remember, the vehicles used to have an orangish interior, so they received an interior overhaul in the 2012 and 2016 timeframe. The light rail cars, the cars that operate in Shaker, are made by the Breda Car Company. We purchased 48 of those, and 29 of those cars remain in service. That fleet is 42 years old, and it did receive a midlife of structural and interior upgrades in the 2005 to 2010 timeframe. On January 21st, 2020, our Board of Trustees authorized the award of a contract to LTK Engineering to prepare the technical specifications for the replacement of our heavy rail vehicles. LTK prepared for us a procurement plan, a fleet procurement plan that recommended that we procure what is called a high-floor light rail vehicle that would be capable of servicing both our red line and our blue and green lines, the high platform territory and the low platform territory. A high floor LRV is a car that can operate in both the heavy rail and light rail territories. It has doors that will allow access on our heavy rail platform. So when you're on a red line platform, that platform is approximately 3.5 feet off the ground, but will also allow, this new vehicle would also allow street level boarding at the LRV platforms. And so when we're operating in Shaker, we're at ground level, and you can walk directly off of the street onto the vehicle or off of the platform onto the vehicle. This vehicle also will allow for ADA access. And so in the light rail area, at the Shaker platforms, we have what we call mini high platforms. They're ramped platforms that allow ADA customers and wheelchairs to access the train. And so this vehicle will also allow for that access, ADA accessibility while in Shaker to those high floor doors. There are several benefits to having a single fleet for any fleet owner. In our case, we replaced 2 fleets with 1 vehicle. That then helps us to reduce the inventory and maintenance cost of those items because we have to have only 1 set of parts for those vehicles. It also will help to reduce the costs that are related to mechanic and operator training. This happens because when we have 1 vehicle, we only have to train our mechanics on that 1 vehicle as opposed to 2, as well as operator training where they'll learn how to drive 1 train instead of the intricacies of 2 trains. And so we'll be able to streamline that. We increase our buying power as well as with this light rail concept, we are able to partake in the economies of scales that are occurring as light rail systems are proliferating throughout the country. And we're increasing our buying power because we can purchase more cars than we would had we broken the fleets apart and attempted to buy just a heavy rail subway car and then a light rail like we currently have. But one of the things that we think is of tremendous value and that our CEO has tasked us with is to make sure that we create a future for the organization that makes it better than we received it. And we will be able to increase the future rail route flexibility for the successors to us in this organization. What you have before you is a current map of the rail system. This current map shows the current blue and green line as well as the red line. And by having a single car, we're able to increase the number of routes that the agency has by over 100%, And so what does that mean? So today, our red line train must only go from the Hopkins Airport to Windermere Rapid Station. But if we were to purchase this vehicle, we're able to have a route that could run from Stokes Windermere Rapid Station in East Cleveland to the waterfront line into the South Harbor, going through the museum district and the waterfront. We're also able to have a route that could run from the Hopkins International Airport to Tower City and then back out of Tower City directly into the waterfront. we're able to have a line that could work and operate from the Green Road Rapid Station in Shaker Heights through Tower City and to the airport. And we're able to also have a line that could operate from Warrensville, Van Aken at the terminus in Shaker Heights through Tower City into the Hopkins International Airport. And this provides a blank canvas for the future leaders of the organization to create new travel patterns on the rail systems as demand generates and as mobility options and mobility choices change. So with that, we are recommending to the board and to the community the vendor of Siemens Mobility as our partner to build our new rail cars. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael Schipper, who will discuss the technical aspects of the rail car.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Caver. I'm going to talk again about the rail car, the new vehicle. New vehicle will be built to the new crashworthiness standards of 2020, which is a pretty significant upgrade for us. The vehicles will have, in addition to our normal pantograph, another one for ice cutting, as that's a need that we have every spring and fall as we deal with freezing rain and mist, and have the locomotive out there as opposed to having every vehicle out there. It'll have a heated windshield and pantograph, again, dealing with our climate. It'll have a low leveling system to adjust the floor height as we're moving between both the heavy rail system, light rail system, and many high platforms. It'll have dedicated climate control for the operator cab so that the operator can have a better working environment as opposed to the climate control we have for the entire train shell. The vehicle will have the 52 seats, which is a reduction, and a couple wheelchair locations and forked bike stations, or stations for bikes. In addition to these features, again, the vehicle will have a number of generational upgrades in terms of technology, cameras, TVs, monitors that didn't exist 40 years ago. Since we met last week, we did field a variety of questions that were kind of categorized in these 4 areas. One on ADA and ADA seating and how the whole ADA works, because that's so important in the rail system. Bike storage, the number of seats, and vehicle load capacity, and then the ice cutter question came up a few times. So we've rearranged some of the slides we had last time to go in this order. From a dimensional standpoint, when we presented this last week, when it came to the seating, we had the original seating numbers for the existing fleet at 80 and 84. When we did the previous interior overhauls and modifications, we did take out some seats, which allowed us to create better wheelchair and bike space in the existing vehicles. So you'll see that we're running mostly 72 in both, as opposed to the 80 and 84 that we showed last week. So that's one change we had on here because we had the original numbers. Again, the seats will be the high quality plastic. A lot of the surfaces in the vehicle will really respond to the ability for cleanliness and sanitation. As we've gone through the pandemic, we know how important that is, and it continues to be important in our customer surveys that we're doing. The vehicles will have 15 cameras, and these will be integrated into the vehicle, so we'll have all the wiring. And in the past, when we added cameras to the vehicles, we had to do all kinds of retrofitting. So there'll be a number of electrical chases and other wiring chasing in these vehicles so that we can adapt to other changes in technology in the future. Again, the main features are shown somewhat on this slide. Again, LED lighting, ergonomic cab area for our operators, CCTV systems. The high-level boarding doors will be the 2 center doors. The low boarding platform doors will be the 2 end doors. And that really is important as we get into the interior layout. You'll have the new crashworthiness standards. As we look at the interior, again with the seating arrangements, the low platform doors on the ends, the high platform in the middle, and the high platform is for that ADA accessibility from the light rail, but also from our mini high platforms on the mini highs on the light rail, as well as the normal height on the heavy rail platform. So the wheelchair stations will be close to the doors, the bike stations will be close to the doors, and there'll be ample room for customers to get in and out on the red line. So that works with some of the arrangement that's been proposed. And again, everything we are showing you on these diagrams are renderings. They are concepts. And in our contract, we do have a 15-month period to finalize all the design details, not only in terms of interior and exterior design and arrangements, but also how all the components fit within the vehicles. On the ADA station, again, that's near the doors. That would be in the middle doors. And that fits, again, with how our platforms operate on the high platforms, and then also with our mini highs. Interior layout, again, with the seating, highlighting airflow, air changes, air handling, filtration systems, high visibility windows, high visibility signs and monitors and TVs and that kind of signage that is now prevalent all over the place, and highly maintainable materials in terms of the floors and the seats. Again, this is a look at bike docking. Personally, I've seen this in Phoenix when they instituted their light rail in 2009. They carry a lot of bikes, and it works really well. And then when there's only one bike, you can stand there with your bike. So we've seen these operate in other places. It is going to be a little different for us, but it works well there. This is an area where the low boarding front door with the steps, entry into the operator cab, and again, the new ergonomically designed operator cab that sits in the center. Again, has a lot of upgrades from what we have now in terms of cameras, monitors, TVs, control console. But some of the things will be laid out similar to what we have, but again, a much better upgrade and a much better seating and visibility experience for the operator. From the outside view, here's a head-on view at a light rail platform. Here's from the exterior, from on top. As we mentioned last week, a lot of the equipment is going to be staged on top of the vehicle as opposed to underneath. This will get it away from some of our slushy, icy, corrosive environment that we have underneath the trains. We do know, it's going to snow on top of the train too, but we do have it set up with ways to access these units, but you'll have, again, HVAC system, propulsion system units, braking system units, pantograph that's shown up here, and then a second pantograph, which is the ice cutter that would come up behind that when we need it. And that'll be on every vehicle. From the front end, a lot of it has to do with visibility. Our lighting technology has certainly gotten so much better. Lighting and signage from 40 years ago, but again, we'll have the railroad lights, route signs in terms of which line it is, destinations, headlights. We want to make sure the vehicle is very visible, so when you're standing on the platform, you can see it arriving. And we also want it very visible to anyone who's near the rail system, particularly as we run in Shaker Heights with the at-grade crossings that we have. There's an exterior view of the design concept. Along with this, as we talked about last time, there are going to be infrastructure modifications. We have two different fleets right now. We're putting in the common fleet. Obviously, there will be some modifications that need to be made both to the Brook Park shop and to the Central Rail maintenance. The Brook Park shop upgrades will be made so that we can accept and receive the vehicles there. Siemens will actually be stationing that location during the acceptance and testing phase of the project. Each of the vehicles need to run 1,000 miles as part of their acceptance testing. And so Siemens will be here to make sure everything's working, run all the test protocols. Particularly with the first 3 vehicles, it's very important because we'll be able to run those first 3 vehicles in 1, 2, and 3 car consists. So we can see how the vehicles communicate with each other and how they hook together and work together. So we will be doing some upgrades there for Siemens. At the Central Rail facility, we also will be doing some shop modifications. You know, we do have different bays where we can work on top of the vehicle for the pantographs now, but we are going to have to do some other stuff on so that we can access the top of the vehicle for the equipment components. There's some other things in the shop that we're not going to have to do too much with. I mean, because we've already got a wheel lathe and those things, and we already have the pits to work underneath. So, but we have things in both facilities. At the stations, the big thing at the stations, the vehicles are thinner or skinnier than what we have now. So the red line platforms are going to have to extend, and we also are going to have to look at and optimize the mini high platforms on the light rail so that as the train comes in and docks and stations, we also have some modification to those. So that's work that we'll be doing over the next couple of years. A key element for us in the phasing of this will be phasing and staging and coming up with designs that could be implemented very fast so that we're not having to disrupt the rail service for an extended period to do this. So that's something that my group will be spending a lot of time on the next couple of years. We also will be putting in a rail connection so that we can actually get the vehicles. They're going to be transported from the manufacturing site via freight rail, and we are looking at a connection at either the port or another connection near our central rail. But right now, that connection is something that we're going to work on so that the vehicles can get offloaded from the freight and then put on our rail system and then towed to Brook Park Shop, where we will then do the commissioning and acceptance. So those are things that are in the overall budget, but we will be working on to make the new vehicles fit our system, or our system fit the new vehicles. And with that, I'll turn it over to Raj.
Good afternoon, Reverend Lucas, members of the board. I'm here to talk about the funding strategy as it relates to the overall rail car program. So the historical perspective that I need to cover, of course, is that it was based on the study by LTK Engineering and somewhat anticipating the results of the study. GCRT accelerated savings to fund the local portion of what initially was a $300 million program. So the idea was to make sure that we had a definitive plan to secure $60 million in local funds. We devised the plan to identify savings in the general fund, to budget, and to transfer funds into a reserve fund specifically designated for the rail car replacement program. That was done to get to the $60 million local match. So an average of $10 million has been transferred into the reserve fund since 2017, totaling $70 million. The plan for 2024 through 2026 is for a total of another $23 million if needed for contingencies. And based on this, we feel that the local portion of the total program is mostly funded. Happy to report that no additional debt issuance is planned. So a firm place and plan to secure the local match enabled and assisted us in our outreach to potential partners at federal, state, and local levels. We've identified funding through these efforts to secure federal formula funds, federal competitive and community project grants, Ohio OTP 2 grants, allocations from the Ohio General Revenue Fund, and NOACA Surface Transportation Block Grant. And I want to make sure that we specifically recognize NOACA's efforts as a partner. They were one of the earliest contributors to the program. We continue to make additional efforts to bridge the remaining gaps. So the total program at $393 million, we expect the funding to look like this. RTA local portion would be at 20.1% at approximately $79 million. Federal, $230 million, representing 58.5%. State of Ohio, $60 million at 15.3% of the total. And local and NOACA that I just spoke about, representing $24 million, which is 6.1% of the total $393 million railcar program. This slide presents the funding stack, if you will, in a slightly more detailed manner. And if I can, so the second column shows the funding amount at the $393 million and the identified funding. I'll highlight the awarded and the committed funds in the two respective columns. One represents cash pretty much in hand. The other one, committed column, represents that the grants notifications have been received, but we do need to do a little bit of work in converting those grants into actual cash. The total of those two columns is roughly $213 million. Unfunded represents grants that we are planning on pursuing or currently in process of pursuing, the biggest one of which is the $130 million in the middle of the page. And if you would remember, early in January, we had applied for a grant under the IIJA for $130 million. Our information is that we expect to hear soon on that award. So the project overview cost for what the resolution that we would be bringing to you at the next board meeting is a base contract of up to 24 vehicles, representing approximately $123.9 million, and non-recurring or one-time costs of $39.9 million, making up the total base order not to exceed amount of $163,920. The non-recurring or one-time costs include items for project management, engineering, testing, training, manuals, field support, spare parts, and special tooling. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Mabry Harris to go over the procurement portion. Mr. Harris?
Good afternoon, Reverend Lucas and members of the board. My name is Mabry Harris, and I am the procurement manager for Fleet and Rail for this procurement. The RFP was issued on October 11, 2021, and accessed on the GCRTA website by 125 interested parties, which included prime contractors and subcontractors. We received one responsive and responsible proposal on March 9, 2022. The proposer was interviewed and submitted a best and final offer. Again, the recommended company is Siemens Mobility, located in Sacramento, California. And in accordance with the federal regulations, the Office of Business Development does not establish goals on rolling stock procurements. Since 1975, more than 1,800 LRVs have been ordered from Siemens to meet urban transport needs in the U.S. and Canada. Siemens has more modern high-floor LRVs designed, built, and operated in the U.S. than any other car builder. They are an industry leader in designing and manufacturing light rail vehicles. Also, Siemens has demonstrated experience in assembling, testing, and commissioning light rail vehicles. I will now turn it over to Mr. Zimmerman to go over the Buy America requirements.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Reverend Lucas, members of the board. My name is Steven Zimmerman. I'm the acting audit manager in our internal audit department, and today I'm filling in for our executive director, Anthony Garofoli. As a condition of using FTA grant funds to purchase this rail rolling stock, the RTA is required to procure a vehicle that is Buy America compliant. That includes requiring that the vendor is able to self-certify that they're able to comply with the Buy America requirements. In addition, the RTA is required to conduct an audit of Buy America, both at the pre-award stage, which is where we're at now, as well as at the post-delivery. There are two key components for Buy America certification. The first is that 70% or more of the vehicle's components need to be of domestic origin by value. The second is that the vehicle must be completely assembled 100% within the United States. In addition to those two requirements, we also need to complete the purchaser's review, which includes validating that the vehicle that we solicited is the same vehicle that we will be purchasing. In addition, that the vendor that is selected is responsible and capable of delivering this rail car. We are planning to visit the vendor's location and conduct these necessary audit items after board award, but prior to full contract execution and notice to proceed. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Kaver to finish our presentation.
Thank you. Based upon the Committee of the Whole's recommendation for award on April 4th, 2023, a resolution will be presented for approval at the April 18th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting. However, we are here to answer any questions that you may have.
After our committee meetings, after our board meetings, my phone lights up with people who are listening, and then they'll call other people. And this proposal really lit up the community. They're looking forward to getting the new cars. And over they would ask me, are they really 40 years old? Well, I can say that because I'm more than 40 years old. But I told them that to just stay tuned, and it was coming up at our full board meeting. So there is quite a bit of community interest in what we're doing, and also the excitement that this is finally coming to fruition and coming to light. So I want to thank the staff, always recognizing our CEO, and to you, Doc, and to all of you who participated in it. We have some of the best with Shipper and Raj and the rest of you. I also want to thank the rest of the staff that's come here today, because I know this is not on your usual calendar on the Monday to be here, but I thank you for that. But I think this is going to be a major plus as far as the community is concerned, to have these new vehicles, and that they will be serviceable. Now, speaking for ADA, speaking for those of us in wheelchairs, as you know, we can get on at Tower City, we can get off at 34th, cannot get off at 79th, and you have to go all the way up. And then this has happened, if you miss getting off at Shaker Square, you have to stay on all the way up, because the rest of those stops in your good city are not ADA except for the one. And I think this is going to really be, because I got quite a few calls from Shaker, because they now can get on the rapid at their stop. They don't have to transfer at Tower City and go all the way to the airport. So you have excitement in the city, excitement in the suburbs, all the way along, and then the comfort of these vehicles and so forth. So I just wanted to put that on the record today. Committee members, yes, Ms. Welch.
I want to echo Reverend Lucas's statements. I mean, this is very exciting work. I mean, even before I came on the board of RTA, I know this is something that we have just, as a community in Greater Cleveland, have been wanting for so long. And even just as we introduced this the last couple of weeks, our peers at APTA in Chicago, in New York, have just been singing our praises because of this work. And so congratulations to everyone who has worked on this. As the elder millennial who is chronically online, I don't know if you've seen it digitally, but people have been talking about GCRTA and us getting this across the East Coast. So I'm very excited for this. I hope you know that we're not only excited, but Greater Cleveland and the country is excited about this. I'm literally seeing the tweets in real time talking about how excited they are and what an example that we're setting here in Cleveland by doing this work. So thank you so much for this, and thank you for this presentation.
Thank
You
you.
know, the word we've been getting with the East Coast, it's like you can get on the rapid here in Cleveland and take it all up to New York. You could just go from one rail to another. Yes, Mayor? Question?
Let me echo the other comments that have been made, but I won't take the time to dwell on that. But it's obviously very exciting. I agree. Lots of calls from the public about this. Front page news, and deservedly so. So that's great. One thing I just want to clarify this, and Doc, maybe you can just confirm for me. This is no question that when we talk about the shaker lines, the blue and the green, that it certainly is very beneficial for shaker, but it applies across the board, right? So you can get on any stop now. I mean, when the transition takes place in the additional routes to the airport, I'm assuming you can get on any of the routes and go to the airport.
So you'll have that flexibility to take any, depending upon the alignment, you'll be able to have routes that can start and end at every location that we have.
Great. I did have a couple of questions, but I'll let my colleague Moss. The first one I have actually is for Raj. If he's, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding the local share. If you could, go back to that where the capital stack was shown.
This one?
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
So if I followed you correctly, originally when the project was anticipated at 300 million, we had a 20% local match, which got you to the 60 million initially. Project then plus one-time costs, I'm assuming then went from 300 million to 393.
93. Right.
And you were saying that from 24 to 26, we were going to try to set aside another 23 million?
That is correct.
And so does that fill the gap between the 60 and the, well, actually, we have 70 today, correct?
Actually, it's 71.7 with investment earnings.
Okay. So does that 23, is that to cover that gap in the local share, or is that for additional, I think you mentioned contingencies and other
I think
costs?
we'll consider it for anything else. So my first attempt would be to get to the 79, which is coming out of the 23 million. So the difference then would be for additional contingencies if they do come up, whatever those contingencies may be.
Is the local share still 20%?
It is 20%.
20%, okay. Maybe a couple questions for, thanks, I appreciate it. Back to Doc for a minute. For those of us who aren't as technically inclined, can you walk through the ice cutter pantograph, how that actually works? I didn't realize it was actually a second one on the rooftop, just how that logistically works?
Yes. So an ice cutter is, it operates on a pantograph, an arm of the train. And instead of having a carbon insert which conducts electricity, this will have a blunt edge of a malleable metal that will scrape along the electrical line in front of the the current conducting pantograph. And its job is to scrape the ice off of the line so that we can continue to get a connection from the line to the train. And so when we have ice storms or we have quick weather changes, when you see in our regular homes that ice has encapsulated the line, we can see it on our tree limbs. When that does so, it insulates the line so that we can't get current from the electrical line to the train. This tool is used to fight that so that while it's icing, it is scraping ice along in front of the train. Currently, we do not have every train outfitted with this, and so this would be a benefit so that we can continue to fight the ice while we're in service, as opposed to trying to maneuver specific trains in order to fight the ice before it encapsulates the line.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. A question on the reduction in the seating.
Yes.
Just curious about the impact then on the number of cars. Now, we're obviously saving some because we have one car as opposed to two cars. But is that, how does those two numbers kind of interplay?
Yeah, so so in the seating capacity, we're reducing the number of seats. However, as compared to the heavy rail vehicle, the new vehicle will have the current heavy rail vehicle seats in a crush load. Well, it has a capacity within a crush load of about 238 people. The new train will have a capacity of 254 people, and so that's standees. A major thing that you'll see there is that the new train is thinner, and so by taking out seats, you're able to have more people in the train who are able to stand. We chose a configuration that has the seats remaining similar to ours, which are forward-facing. This is as compared to other cities where you may be on a bench that's parallel to the aisle, where there's more standing capacity, but less seating capacity. And so as compared to our current heavy rail fleet, we'll go from about 238 to 254. For our light rail vehicle, the current light rail vehicle that we have has a max capacity of 270, and we'll go to 254. So those 20 in a delta will not automatically mean that we'll have needing another train, but we will have the ability with this fleet to be able to carry multiple trains.
I would just, an aside to that, it's not my question, but I don't go very often on the green or the blue line, but I do get on and off the red often. And there really is rarely a time that these trains are full. So it's losing some seating space would really only matter, I think, more like St. Patrick's Day, opening days, those kind. But if we have more capacity to stand, then we're moving people. And I think that it's going to be a little newer concept on those days, perhaps for people in Cleveland, but in other cities, it's very common. Miss Birdsong, Terry, and I know that, you know, as young people living in Chicago, we just assumed that most days that we were going to be standing on the train, and the trains move pretty fast, so it's not a burden. But I do think it's a really good idea that, you know, that we have the capacity, but the seating, it will be a good problem to have if we end up having that.
Thank you, I agree.
The last question before I turn it over to Ms. Moss. The 7 years timeframe to purchase the additional 36 cars, yeah. What happens in the pricing during that period? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have negotiated with the vendor a method for calculating the options. The method for calculating the options is that we will have a base price to the car. And so our base price to the car is this $5.1 million that you see there. And then depending upon the time that we exercise the option, we'll pay an inflation number based upon materials and labor that we will have agreed upon, which indicator we'll use. So it'll be that base car price of 5.1 plus an inflationary factor based upon inflation.
Got it. Great, thank you. I yield the floor to my colleague.
So I too think it's probably the most exciting thing we've done since I've been on the board, and I think I'm like at 12 or 13 years now, so I think that it's really fun, and I'm sorry I'm not going to be here next Tuesday to vote on it, but I would be a strong yes.
All right.
So I have mine are more physical questions about some of the trains. So the way that we're going to do, I'm going to go point. Oh, well, I could go over here. So when you're on the train, it's going to be good for the red line to be here for the ADA accessible, but knowing that we're doing this with the idea that we're going to be having to have ADA compliant people eventually come here, I'm a little worried about this aisle because we've gotten much skinnier. And I'm just thinking that, what the aisles are now, I can't imagine we're going to have double seats. How
Ms. Moss?
does this gentleman get through there?
If I can, Ms. Moss. So it's actually going to operate a bit.
Doc, would you be able to repeat the question? 'Cause we do
yes, I
have
can.
virtual people online.
So the picture that we're looking at here, Ms. Moss, the question that she asked was that on the red line, the entrance would be through the middle of the door, and the wheelchairs would then navigate themselves to that middle area. And then she asked, but for the light rail would be the front door. And so, Ms. Moss, I may not have communicated this well, but all of the ADAs will always enter through the middle of the vehicle. So the mini high platforms that we have are in Shaker, where they actually are on a ramp, and then they enter through the middle of the vehicle also.
I see. There's a specific spot to do that. Okay, that's because I'm having a little bit hard time. Think I have been on this specific train, but not with a double. I think that I have seen it with
In
a
San
single.
Francisco?
Well, I actually think it was in Europe, but I'm not sure. But it looks very similar to this. And then there's also the same version of the train that just have two singles on there. They're more like streetcars, and they're just have two singles all the way up and down. But so I'm just like thinking that how wide our trains are, and if you're still keeping two double wide seats, how big is that space in there? And that's something for engineers to determine. I will defer that you know what you're talking about.
Hey, Doc?
Yes.
If I can you go back to that slide?
The overview slide?
Yeah, I just want to confirm. You tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Yes.
So my understanding is that you're saying that we'll have the wheelchairs here and basically close to the middle doors. So theoretically, there never should be a need to be able to
Right.
enter in from the side, which I agree with you. The other alternate in other locations, there could be a wheelchair going through the middle aisle, but we'll not have that need because they'll come in through the middle, park their vehicle, so to speak, and then exit through the same.
Correct.
Okay, so always through the middle, so that's good. The other thing I'm thinking of is, we're going to have a long period, probably over 10 years, in which that we're going to be like substituting vehicles out because we're like kind of on a 7-year for the red line, and we haven't even started the green and the blue. And I'm thinking of these platforms. So meanwhile, they're going to have to accommodate the old red train line trains, and then we're going to have some new ones. And the logistics, and I know we're going to retrofit them, but how does that work on a day-to-day basis when some of the trains are going to be wider and some are going to be narrower?
Great question. And that's when I alluded to the work that we're going to have to do for the platform conversion. We're going to spend some time figuring that out. But the short answer to start with is that our intention is to do the first conversion when we have 24 cars on the property. And the first conversions will be on the red line platforms. So the base order of 24 cars is going to be dedicated to the red line service. And we will modify those red line platforms either, and we haven't figured out the staging. We might do the red line west first, and then do red line east. We might do red line east first, then red line west. We are looking at modular solutions that could be implemented quickly. We've also incorporated a couple things into some current projects, like the West 117th Street project that's out for bid right now. We actually designed the platform so that we can add a 8 or 9 inch piece to it quickly. We also have some things in the East 79th Street platform that we can add to quickly. So we have been thinking about it, and we will probably be experimenting with the 10 West platform when we get the initial 3 cars to see how things fit. But once we widen that, we cannot run the light rail through there. So the platforms at Tower City, East 34th, and East 55th, for a while, we may actually have to use the light rail platform at those 3 locations to have our passengers come in and out of until we get more of the light rail cars produced with the options. So, and another piece of this, yeah, the contract's 7 years. Certainly, we don't want to take all 7 years to exercise the options, but the options are set up that we would order the cars in groups of 6. So 30, 36, 42, 48. And once we get to a point where we have 36 or 42 cars, we can then just get rid of the light rail cars and work with a short fleet for a little bit, because the cars will be manufactured and delivered at a rate of 4 per month. Even if it takes us 2 years to exercise an option, as long as we keep that production going, the production level will be at 4 cars a month. So it won't be as long on the tail end as far as delivery. The first 24 cars are to be delivered in the first 4 years. So 4 years from notice to proceed would be that switch, the first switch on the red line. So yeah, it's complicated. And we're going to probably talk about it for the next 4 years.
Right, because there's going to be a time, like day one, you're going to have the red car delivering people. We got the new trains, we're ready to go. There's probably going to have to be a period of time that no trains can run, because how are you going to make it all happen seamlessly?
Right, and it may be,
Possible.
as we put it together, part of our thoughts is to get the design work done so that we can have those that project bid and have the materials staged in here well in advance of the time of the implementation. So it could be a couple, we want to make sure it's as minimally disruptive when we do the switch, but we know we're not going to be able to do it overnight.
Right, it's impossible.
It's impossible.
Right.
I mean,
Just,
maybe it'll take 2 weeks, maybe, but we don't want it to take 6 months, that's for sure.
I mean,
So-
the idea is that you're going to know what you're going to do, be ready to do it, and then do it.
Then do it.
Right.
And we have a couple years to figure that out. But we are already thinking a lot about it. Joe's group is spending lots of time talking and brainstorming, and we have been able to integrate some of that design into a couple of the projects we have going now. So that's going to help. Because we know we have a couple stations we can convert really easy. So, but it's a great question. I did want to make one comment. When Raj talked about the budget, the initial $300 million budget was based on a 50-car fleet. Okay, we are proposing a 60-car fleet. We kind of got a little over-aggressive when we first started the program because we had not raised any money. And we're thinking, how are we going to raise $300 million? How are we going to raise anything? So we built that $300 million estimate on 50 cars. So if you add the 10 cars for 60, that's $50 million at So that 300 with 60 would have been 350 million. The jump from 350 to 393 is really the effect of inflation that we've had since we started this program in 2017. So that impact of inflation, that's about not quite 15%. So there's two pieces to our revised budget. And the biggest piece.
That's going to continue throughout the project. We're going to have this inflation problem, and that brings me to my question of this $130 million that we're not funded is, what if that doesn't happen? What's our contingency plan?
Well, the contingency plan we have in our grant making is if we don't get it, we get the debrief and we go for it again and again and again. And it's been a pretty successful strategy we've had over the years. But what it will do is it, as Raj pretty eloquently said, up to, the base order may not be 24. And that's something we're going to spend between now and next Tuesday, or by the time we get to notice proceed, is what is that up to number? And right now, I really don't want to talk about it.
We don't want to be the wet blanket today.
No, but we will, if the grant awards are announced and we're not winning the grant, we know the next opportunity to apply is a year from now. We're not going to wait another year. We're going to order something. And then
we're on our 4.
And then we'll keep working the grant-making process, not only with FTA, but we're going to be applying again this year with ODOT, because ODOT's program is a 1 year at a time allocation, and we'll just keep going. So that's our strategy on the grant side, is just to keep going and going and going.
Okay, and thank you, Mike. This is more, my next question is my audit procurement question. And you'd all be disappointed if I didn't ask. So there's one bidder, and I remember we started to go through this process once before, and then something, I can't remember if we didn't get a responsive bid or what it was, and we pulled it and we started the process over. Is this the same vendor, or is this the vendor who was claiming they didn't have enough time to respond or something?
I can answer the first piece, and then I'll turn it over to you. No, this is a different vendor. The first vendor, when they proposed, did not meet the Buy America, couldn't even begin, so it was a non-responsive proposal to begin with, so we needed to cancel it. That's the answer to the first part.
All right, but the Siemens was the one that was also showing interest but didn't make the
Correct.
deadline or
That's
something,
absolutely correct? That's absolutely correct.
Okay, and we feel over there, do we feel comfortable that we only had one bidder, or it is what it is, and this is our situation?
Yeah, so we feel comfortable because we've sat in on all the procurement discussions. We were part of the debriefs that we had with the vendors who were solicited but did not propose. So we have a responsive and a bidder here, so we're comfortable with what we have available to us.
And plus, we also know what other people are paying, I presume.
Correct.
So there is some check, just so the public knows that, we know that these are all public bids, and we know what other people are paying, given their size, that we feel comfortable.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If I could,
And I have, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I just have one more question. It's
Go ahead.
related to that.
Absolutely.
Okay. My final question is really a selfish question. So go back to that bike rack part. And I understand why we're doing it this way, because it gives us more room, it gives us standing room, it gives us all those things. But do you really think Karen Moss is going to be able to lift her bike, hook it in there up vertically? I'm just kind of, maybe if you're a nice, young, strong man like yourself, might be a little different than me.
I have seen all kinds of sizes, shapes of people able to maneuver this. Now, again, this if you're the only one with your bike,
Correct.
don't have to worry about it. But those racks actually work pretty good, and they are simple. But your bike, I mean, the bike is heavy, depending on how heavy your bike is. But it works very well in lots of other systems, and I would hope that you'd be able to do it. I think you can do it.
I have to start working out a little more.
You work out a lot. So, it is used in a lot of places, and it does work. And certainly, there are many times if the train is that full, there's going to be helpful people to get the bike up and down. If the train is empty, like the one on the screen, no problem. But it is going to be different. It's something we talked a lot about on the health line, and we decided not to do it on the health line. But there are days on the health line that I'm thinking, geez, we should have put the bike racks in. But I guess we'll see. We will see.
Or anything else?
Just one more. I love concept phases because it's an opportunity for considerations. If you could consider anything for this, I'm thinking about how we advocate for parents. And so it's not legally required for us to think about these things, right? It's legally required for us to think about ADA compliance. But I think what's important and something that keeps coming up, especially now that we have the Baby on Board program, is making sure that if you have a stroller, right? My question was the same as Mrs. Moss. How do we get large machinery or machinery onto this? And we know this now through the middle. But if I have a stroller, how do I make sure that I'm getting on effectively and there's accommodations for me? And so I don't have the answers to that, but I'm offering that it would be nice, one, to have spaces that are designated, or just a space that's designated if you have a stroller, because it can be really complicated to get on, off. You have to put the stroller back together, then sit down, then if it's snowing and it's raining and it's messy, you have to take the stroller. I mean, it's a lot, and I'm not even a parent. I'm just watching it as I'm writing the RTA in real time happen. And normally there's 5 people trying to gather around that parent to make sure that they can get what they need. But if there was some way, and I've seen it done in other cities, where we can, have a seat where it can lift up or something like that, beyond the spaces that are designated, obviously, for wheelchair accessibility, but just offering up, it would be great to see some accommodations for parents with strollers.
Ms. Welch, are you trying to tell us something?
Oh, no. For the public, on the record, I'm not. Just trying to advocate for those who are and expecting.
I understand that Siemens is on the line, and they can answer your question about stroller as well as bicycle. Hello?
Yeah, so we have Siemens representative as well as our LTK representatives. So Brian Hawkins, might you talk about bike racks and other storage areas, i.e. for baby carriages on trains?
Brian, you may have to unmute yourself, because I think I had to mute you when you first joined the meeting. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people on the light rail cars, like we're talking about. You can fold most of those strollers and, keep it on the aisle or near the aisle, or sometimes you can almost roll it right in front of your feet. There's enough room, leg room there, depending how big you are and how tall you are. But you could move it over there. I haven't seen any problems with that.
Well, it looks like that the seats are more closer together on this. So that's why with them being closer together, it looks like it's a little harder for you to get strollers in between there compared to the current rail.
Yeah. And a lot of people will carry a big suitcase, especially going to the airport, and you can put it right next to your seat as long as it's not out in the middle of the aisle where somebody would, step on it or hit it. But I think though it's wide enough, the vehicle itself is wide enough to have room there to put a stroller, I believe.
And Ms. Welch, as we look through, and I think you said that we're in a concept phase, and so as we take into consideration different thoughts, I do recognize, and we have the same issue on our bus where the ADA section is also the stroller section. So
Yeah.
it says, and then when there's a conflict,
Yes.
it is a
Yeah, there's a
conflict for 30
conflict.
seconds, right?
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out. And so we can definitely think through how that may look. In the current concept, it may be, an example could be taking the closest seats and making those the areas. And so we'll definitely look through those type of thoughts as we navigate what the final interior will look like. But the
Thank you.
vehicle, as you mentioned, as compared to our heavy rail vehicle, which is the widest vehicle, it is less space. The current light rail is a little bit more similar to the size because it was meant for street operation, but as compared to the heavy rail, it is less space, less width, and I definitely think that we will take into consideration as we navigate.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right,
Yes,
anything
we can
else?
certainly look at those issues.
Thank you.
No, we have people on the line,
Yes,
is that right?
yes, if I may, and I can wrap it up if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We are running a little short on time, so Doc, you're going to speed.
Quickly.
Okay, there we go.
Gotcha.
So we've got two quick things, 30 seconds apiece. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on, we were batting 1,000 for trying to anticipate some of the questions that you had, so you might have seen some smirking going on. We were like, there we go. There was a question about just the competition in the industry. If you could really quickly be able to kind of summarize the actual vendors that can produce these kind of cars and what we're dealing with.
Yeah, so thank you, Ms. Birdsong. Ms. Moss, as we went through a debrief for this high floor LRV, there's really only three vendors, of which Siemens is one, who could create this vehicle, this dual vehicle. And as we navigated conversations with the other vehicle manufacturers through our debriefs that internal audit was on, and we described, one of the main areas that made those other vendors, as they described, not be able to or choose to compete was the size of the order. And so when you're going out for 24 cars and these other, large cities, you guys grew up in Chicago, are going out for 700, just a different way. And so not everyone wants to compete for a smaller. We are excited that Siemens is interested in our business and willing to compete for this area. But there's not many vehicle manufacturers that are willing to make the high floor LRV. The alternative would have been to try to attempt to bring another subway style car in here and then a light rail car, but we would have been constrained with the same issues that we have now, different parts, different training, no ability to increase the number and flexibility of routes that we have.
Thanks, Doc. One other thing, and then if I get afforded 20 seconds by our chair, I'll wrap us for the day before it's concluded, if that's okay. The other item was the flexibility. If we don't get the funding and we have to look at the lesser cars, operationally, what's the take?
Yeah, so definitely our goal is to try to get the cars, but we do have opportunities within our current fleet. And because we'll have a single fleet, the extra cars can be moved between the two fleets. It's more economical for us, right? So we don't have to have a spare fleet for the heavy rail and a spare fleet for the light rail. They become each other's. And so, depending upon both our ridership, as Ms. Moss mentioned, our heavy rail, the red line, is not always packed. And so you can break the trains apart, add trains here, add trains to the specific trip. And so if in the morning, the 8 a.m., the trip that leaves the airport coming into downtown at 7:15 needs 2 cars, the trip at 10 o'clock does not. And so we're definitely going to be nimble and working with the team to try to figure out how to ensure that we maximize the ability to provide for a tremendous service for our community, but within the funds that we have.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Board, for allowing us to just give you that little tidbit of information. I also wanted to say thank you for the quality of the questions, if I can say that respectfully. I think they were really spot on, and I'm glad that we went through this as a team to really think through a lot of the same concerns that you had were concerns that we had as well. And I will gladly donate a few strollers, and if you need a double, I got that. If you need a single, I got that, to be able to test out some of those capacity issues. Reverend Lucas, I hand it back to you, sir.
Thank you. I want to thank Vice President Moss for being here, Chairman of the committee, Mayor Weiss, and certainly to Ms. Welch for their time today and everybody else. Do we have people on the line?
No, there's no one on the line, right, Patrick? We don't have any web form comments either.
Yeah, we're going to do the line, then we'll do it in person. Say you have one or none?
We don't have any,
Very
correct, Patrick? Right,
Oh, very
no
good.
callers.
All right, anyone here wish to speak? Yes, my dear friend.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having an extra meeting so we can really have a deeper dive. So I will speak fast, sorry about that. Now, there are lots of issues about ADA compliances. It's not only the wheelchair. Wheelchair actually is easier taken care of because these people already sit on their chairs. However, Ms. Welsh already started that, which was my main concern. People with a shopping cart, elderly shopping cart, or single parent, even a grandparent with a stroller. Nowadays, we have a single stroller, double stroller. For these people to utilize public transportation, it's very important that safety should be really taken as a first priority, just like people using wheelchair. The walkers, strollers, shopping carts. I would suggest right now the space we will leave for wheelchairs, that section. If we can apply something which I have seen on the new Healthline vehicle, you may have a single seat can be folded up. So the space, if there's no wheelchair, the stroller or the shopping cart can be stationed there, and this elderly person or the parents who actually doesn't come with a chair can sit on it to watch the kids and the goods. Things like that. So that will be safer. And congratulations, finally people understand that squeeze all the seats in a car. It's not really a safe way for everybody to go through their trip because it's hard to walk around. Also, people like me, short, I have to emphasize again, short. For us to go through other people with bags, heavy bags, backpacks, whatever, we can get hit very easily. And on this illustration and the photo right now for the concept, we have not seen any devices which will help people in the blind community and deaf community to utilize the transportation. So I wish those can be implemented. And also, please don't think that it's a light rail, the seats should be also narrow. Think about that. We are in Cleveland. We have a snow, ice in the winter. That's why I leave my coat on. If I have even more coat on, no matter how thin I actually could be, I will definitely become wider. So please don't make the seats narrow to accommodate the space for the walkway. So there are lots of things we should think about. And not to have too many seats actually is a good safety concern and for us to apply. But please don't encourage people, all the people are standing there, because even though our rapids will be more stable than all the fixed route vehicles, but still, in my situation, I actually have lots of injury. For me to standing there for long, I'm in severe pain. So don't encourage people. For the people who are willing to do that, it's good. So I wish we can purchase more vehicle. Thank you. And lots of the good feature, wish we can save them for our fixed route vehicle too. Thank you very much.
All right, anybody else? Anybody else here want to have any comment? Anybody else? All right, very good. Again, thank you for all of you who have been here. We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, Welch.
All right, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned, and I'll see you at the board meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.